Hi, everyone. Today, we're here to discuss a very important and common type of transaction that we see all across through businesses in the UAE and worldwide for that matter. Now, that type of transaction is the concept of cross charges, recharges, reimbursements. It has many nomenclatures, but in essence, what happens is essentially a party incurs some expenses or some charges on another party's behalf and onwards recovers it from them through issuing an invoice. Mm-hmm. All right. Now, let's take a minute to understand a very important concept from a VAT perspective, which is the concept of reimbursements and disbursements. So as an overview, reimbursements are a transaction that is subject to VAT at the standard rate, whereas disbursements are transactions that fall outside the scope of VAT. Now, to understand this better, we need to consider that there are certain principles to analyze when you're thinking about these concepts. So the principles are generally who actually is the recipient of the goods and services in the case, right? Who actually is responsible for making the payment?
Of course.
Who is the invoice addressed to? Is there any authorization for the payment to be made on another one's behalf? So in general purposes, in case those principles fall towards the recoverer, the person recovering from the end customer, then it would generally be in form of a reimbursement. Whereas if those principles are aligned towards the other party, then you could constitute it as a disbursement. But this is a very hot topic and a topic that needs to be analyzed in great detail. So Gaurav, I wanted to ask you today, what major areas of non-compliances do you see with regards to cross charges?
See, to be very honest with you, this is a very crucial topic and the FTA has picked up this topic. And during audits, we are seeing that most of our clients are making mistakes here. And we are rectifying, and the rectification comes with the cost.
Yeah.
The cost can be administrative penalties, VDs, audit penalties. So reimbursement is a concept wherein VAT is supposed to be charged, and people are missing out on that. I'll cite few examples which have huge implications. Like we know one of our known clients is dealing in typing center.
Right.
So there are certain government charges which are there in the typing center. And once they're cross-charging or recovering that amount, because the invoices are addressed to the typing center, and if they're recovering that from their end customer, they're not supposed to out of scope the transaction. They're supposed to charge VAT. Now, what government is doing, government is providing those services which are in sovereign capacity. And if they're providing those services, government can, you know that they can actually out of scope the transaction, because that's not considered as a taxable supply.
Absolutely.
But if the company is recovering that money from the end user, they're supposed to charge VAT. This is one of the examples which we have seen. We have seen that the automotive guide also captures one example of Salik. What happens is that if a rent-a-car company is leasing out a car to an end user and the end user is incurring Saliks and that is being recovered, now the invoice is getting from the Salik. The registration of the car is on the name of the company. So the invoices and everything is going to the company. Yeah. And once the Salik is being recovered from the end customer, the rent-a-car company is supposed to charge VAT. So we have seen a lot of clarifications coming in guides, in private clarifications. We had filed a lot of clarifications. So these charges have become very critical, and the authorities are reviewing it in very depth. One great example for the real estate sector or the developers who are actually, or maybe the sellers who are actually selling property is the land department charges 4% for transfer of an asset. So if I'm selling an asset to you, the land department will charge 4%. So I'll be responsible for the 2% and you'll be responsible for the another 2%.
Right.
So now what happens is that the land department, the DLD, issues two separate documents. One document for 2% is addressed to you and another document is addressed to me. Yeah. Because it's my responsibility. Now if I am charging that back to you, I'm supposed to charge VAT, because it's not a recovery which I'm doing on a sovereign capacity, because I'm no one. I'm not government.
Right.
It's the invoice is addressed to me, I'm charging back to you. So technically there should be VAT. And the authorities have clarified this. But we see that there is an exposure on these such recoveries. We have seen so many group companies. They have about 15, 16 entities which are not in the tax group, but they are cross-charging They're not even considering anything, but they're just directly cross-charging. The invoice is addressed to one company, payment is happening for another company, it is for another company. So those transactions again are critically analyzed, because when the FTA comes, they start with the balance sheet and all the related party transactions. They start with that, and then it's very easy for them to sort of understand how and what should be the VAT treatment.
Right.
So that's very important from a VAT perspective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think in conclusion, those points have very far-reaching implications, especially, some of the examples you gave. It's important to understand that these transactions have implications on majority of not even taxpayers, population as well, right? So the extent of implications here cannot be undersold. And I think generally, as you mentioned, a concept of cross-charges, which is so prevalent in the industry, it's so common, needs to be carefully analyzed, carefully addressed. And going forward, especially it's 2024, the argument that VAT is nascent is becoming very weak now.
Of course.
It's been, multiple years now. So it's really important that the companies do review these transactions in detail. They do the health checks, they do the thorough analysis, get tax consultants, do all the reviews, make the rectification measures, because once the FTA comes for audit, they are picking up these aspects.
Of course.
So plan the way forward and definitely consider these points.
Of course.
Thank you.